And I'm president of the board out here. And on behalf of the rest of the board members, we want to welcome you to our museum. And we want to thank you for coming out. This is a historic day for Chillicothe. We were fortunate that we could bring Chillicothe history back. We didn't necessarily bring the bread slicer for the museum. It has to stay here. I mean, this is home for it. The bread slicer is Chillicothe history, so our feelings were that it belongs to the city. So anyway, this today is the exact 85th anniversary of the first loaf of sliced bread, and it happened to be sliced here in Chillicothe. That is where the phrase, the best thing since sliced bread, came from. That was the phrase basically that's around the world, and you know, I'm just tickled to death that we could be part of this. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Chuck, who is going to welcome you from Chillicothe.
As it's been a fantastic week since we welcomed the U.S. Military All-Stars with a parade through town on Thursday to an over-capacity crowd at June Schaefer Memorial Park and a big ball game, and the first holiday that we've had our brand new water park open and just fantastic attendance there. And then to wrap up all of that with 85 years of history today. And I was just thinking on the way out and telling Jim Bly, you know, I think maybe after the recent article in Reader's Digest and the fact of CBS this morning carrying the story, that maybe now everyone will realize the original home of sliced bread. We still have the building here. Now we have the sliced bread slicer. It happened in Chillicothe, Missouri. I want to welcome you all, and especially the special guests that are here to take part in this ceremony today. This is a great asset, as many other things are, to our city, and we're certainly glad to have this on loan from the Smithsonian. Thank you very much, Marvin, and thank you all.
Then I want to introduce our curator, Pam Klingerman. She's the one that always answers the phone when you call, and then she's got someone that she wants to introduce.
Right. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. This is really a wonderful day. And although I'm not from Chillicothe, it's so nice to be able to help bring the bread slicer back to Chillicothe. And I would not have been able to do it without someone very close. This is Claudia Allen. And she actually opened doors, cut red tape, told me who to call, got me into the Smithsonian hierarchy, and so we could start getting this together. And it's been a 2-year process. But anyway, Claudia, would you like to come up?
Thanks.
Yes, I will.
Oh, I can't. I'm gonna cry. I was born here, and sorry, it's emotional. But always returning is a pleasure, and working with everyone here and keeping in touch with everyone. And now I live a long way from here. I live in San Diego. But in 2003, I became a member of the National Board of the Smithsonian Institution. And we are a board that is a fundraising arm and such, and we do try to go out and do these sort of things for communities. And I became a member of that board in 2003 and served till the year 2009. You do a 6-year tenure. But they never let go of you, which is awesome, because being a part of such a fantastic institution as the Smithsonian, with 140 million artifacts, 6,300 employees, and 6,500 volunteers, it is an enormous place. It's daunting, to say the least. And when I first started getting in contact with Kathy Ripley about this bread slicer, I was so excited, and it was exciting news, and it's just been a great journey ever since, and then meeting Pam. But today I wanted to, Pam, where's that envelope?
Oh.
I want to read something to everyone because getting a letter like this just doesn't happen. It took a few. My husband said I cut the bread tape, that I didn't cut red tape. And so I really wanted to recognize this. It's such a momentous day for this community and the region and everything that between Kathy and Pam and the board of directors here and the citizens and their support of all this, it's all come to fruition today. But in the midst of this, the secretary of the Smithsonian found it necessary to write a letter to Pam and to the board, and I want to read it because it's very special. And it takes a lot of doing to get this done, probably 20 or 30 emails and letters and phone calls, but he did it, and he's a wonderful gentleman. His name is Dr. Wayne Clough, and it's addressed to Miss Pamela Klingerman. It says, "Dear Miss Klingerman, it is with great pleasure that I write to congratulate you and the directors of the Grand River Historical Society and Museum on your new exhibition, Better Than Sliced Bread. We are delighted that your presentation includes the bread slicer from the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. Reaching people everywhere is a cornerstone of the Smithsonian's mission, and I am pleased that the people of Chillicothe, Missouri will have access to this uniquely American treasure during the 85th anniversary of commercially sliced bread. Smithsonian collections belong to us all, and I truly appreciate your efforts to help us share the story of American innovation and ingenuity. The Smithsonian's partnership with the Grand River Historical Society and Museum reminds us all how important it is for museums everywhere to support each other in our pursuit to educate the public about our collective history. I hope that this is the start of a long-lasting and productive relationship between the Smithsonian and Chillicothe. I wish you the very best with the opening of your exhibition. I am sure it will be the greatest thing since sliced bread."
That's great.
Well, I was thrilled. I couldn't wait till it got FedExed here because I was a nervous wreck that it wasn't going to get here on time, but I had it in my iPhone just in case. Kathy Ripley, would you please come up here so I can embarrass you? I want to say to you, so I have made a note that I want you to keep, and I will read from it because it... We've never met. We've only talked on the phone. And it's just a pleasure because I've heard so many great things about you. But from the very beginning to the end, your research and dedication has led to this. The discovery, your shared knowledge has led to this exhibit. It has come to fruition. The culmination of your efforts as a star reporter. And I congratulate you. Thank you. You'll make me proud. For you. You can open it at your leisure. Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
And Miss Pam. Pam, I'll tell you, what a journey. And I remember a lot of the conversations, and it got like, I said, are you prepared to jump through the flaming hoops of the bureaucracy of this institution?
Oh, yeah.
And you were up for the challenge. And I got to tell you, you've done an incredible job. But here again, there are a few things I want to read because I can't remember. I'm kind of nervous. I'm excited. It's more excitement. It is with great pleasure that I present you with this gift, commemorating the opening of this exhibit. I hope this token of my appreciation will always hold lasting memories of an accomplishment that brings joy and pride to Chillicothe and its surrounding communities. This is only the beginning of enormous opportunities for the Grand River Historical Society and Museum. Thank you for your perseverance and your devotion to educating, vitalizing, and inspiring this community. Sincerely. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Enjoy this.
Thank you.
And thank you to the entire community. I feel so welcome here and at home. And just have a wonderful day and just had the best time with this bread slicer. And I've told everyone I know all across the country. So it's quite a story. Thank you.
Okay, do you have anyone else that you want to?
Something else that's happened, I actually have a summer intern to help. And Emily, Where's Emily?
Where's Emily?
Oh, there's Emily. Come up here. This gal is doing an amazing job. She's making my job so much easier. Maybe making a niche. So this is Emily. Hi.
Okay, then we've got one that we want to mention. After we killed the rainforest on paperwork and stuff, we finally had to contact Sam Graves' office. We had to get some politics involved in it. And Shauna is the one from Sam's office that went to bat for him, and bless their hearts, they broke a lot of red tape too. So, Shauna. We have some of the grandchildren of the benches and the rowetters both, and most of them have indicated they didn't really want to be introduced. So anyway, I think we've got one here on the front that is going to comment if Kathy doesn't say enough. So at this time, are we ready to turn it over to Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay, well, this turnout is just totally amazing, and this is great, and appreciate the kind words and all the work that everybody was involved in this. And it really is a neat experience to be here and be a part of it. You know, 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, I never would have dreamed something like this would have happened today, would be happening today. Because 10 years ago, we only had just one piece of the entire puzzle. We didn't know the rest of the story. We just had a front page article in 1928 that said sliced bread is made here, and then there was a full page advertisement saying that sliced bread is going to be introduced the next day in the grocery stores. That is all we had. So anyway, what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is how I came across this, because it's just I don't know if you want to call it a happy accident or dumb luck or whatever, but just stumbled across it, and it just, you know, involved people being, you know, the right people being in the right place at the right time and responding in the right way, that we actually can put all the pieces together and have, you know, this wonderful day today. Oh, that's me. Sorry about that. Go over here.
Go for it.
Go for it. All right. Well, it all started back in 2001. And I was doing research. I work at the newspaper. I was doing research for a history book. And it was going to be a chronological history book, year by year. You know, starting with the earliest records that I could find. And I combed through microfilm, just back to the 1860s was about the earliest. Day by, you know, page by page, day by day, year by year, and it was, if anybody's ever done any kind of microfilm research, you can imagine how tedious that job might have been. And to be real honest, there were times where I thought maybe I would just skip a day, skip a week. Would anybody really notice? And then looking back on it all, you know, what a tragedy that would have been if I happened to just skip over July 6, 1928. Because I don't know that we would know anything more about sliced bread. So anyway, that's a little bit how I came about coming across the article. And in Friday's newspaper, we ran a copy of that. Back then, if you can imagine, the newspapers were wider, were a lot narrower than what we are. So anyway, this was the front page of the July 6, 1928 newspaper. And in here, just not a big banner headline. I think probably they were a little skeptical themselves. Maybe it wasn't really going to take off. But just a little one-column headline, sliced bread is made here. Inside, though, they had a full-page advertisement that sliced bread will be introduced tomorrow and available on the grocery store shelves. And you can't see it from there, but there's a list of all the grocery stores in town, and the older folks around here, I'm sure, can remember that there used to be lots of grocery stores in Chillicothe, lots of just your neighborhood grocery stores. and I have notes too, so we can go by. But anyway, so that's kind of how I came across that article, but I also want to, and then the events that happened after that is how I got to know a little bit about two very important men that made it happen here in Chillicothe. And, yeah, that's all right. That's just the microfilm, and this is a large version of what was on the screen at the time. Sliced bread is here. All right, go ahead. Okay, Otto. First we have Otto Rowetter. And Otto was a native of Davenport, Iowa. He had a long and distinguished career in the field of commerce. He entered into the jewelry business in 1898 and acquired 3 jewelry stores with headquarters in St. Joseph, Missouri. Due to health reasons, he sold his interest in the jewelry store and moved back to Davenport in 1916. And he'd been tinkering with the idea of sliced bread and making a bread slicer. And in 1917, he had his first bread slicer completed. A company in Illinois was set to manufacture it, and it was set to manufacture. Unfortunately, a fire struck the building, and he lost everything in that fire. He lost his machine, he lost his blueprints, the tools, the dies, everything that he needed. So it took him a while to recoup his losses. Then finally in 1928, he was able to start production, and his first customer was Frank Bench.
Whoa.
Hold on.
How many of Otto's relatives do we have? Just hold up your hand. Okay?
And I might say this is a little intimidating, talking about. We are so glad that you're here. They traveled from Louisville, Kentucky, so we're very pleased to have you here. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead to the next slide. And the bread slicer was an instant. The bread slicer was an instant success. And Otto went on to be a highly sought-after speaker in the baking industry and was well respected by his peers. Due to the stock market crash of 1929, necessary finances to continue the manufacture of the bread slicer all but disappeared. Otto was forced to sell his patent in order to see his dream fulfilled. In doing so, he lost all rights, but he did live long enough to see that the world accepted sliced bread. Otto died in 1960 and is buried in Albion, Michigan. All right, go to the next one. The second individual is Frank Bench.
How many Frank Bench relatives do we have? Oh, we have several of those.
So glad that you're here. Marion Franklin Bench was born on a farm near Utica, not too far from here. He attended Utica High School and Emerson Business College at Dubuque, Iowa. In 1916, he moved to Chillicothe, where he established his first bakery at Clay Street. He was successful in his bakery business, and an advertisement in 1920 edition of the Constitution Tribune stated that Bench Bakery makes over 10 tons of bread a week. So he had a business going. All right, go ahead to the next slide. In 1921, it's not a real good reproduction, but in 1921, he built a new building to house his bakery and promoted it as a 20th century achievement. So it's a scientific bakery. Its 20th century achievement is now in operation. I wonder if at that time he knew something great was going to happen, because this was 7 years before sliced bread was introduced at that building. At some point, Frank left the bakery business. In 1948, he became street commissioner for the city of Chillicothe. Frank served on the Chillicothe City Council and had also worked at the Strand Hotel. He had a son who died during World War II and a daughter from a previous marriage. Frank died in 1963 and is buried in Utica. Okay. At this time, I'm uncertain as to how Frank and Otto came together, how they got to know each other, but I do know that in 1926, they collaborated their efforts and they came up with a bread rack, and this is patented jointly by the two of them. And this is a bread rack that would be put in grocery stores to display and store bread. And then the bakeries would supply the grocery stores with them, and they would have advertisements on the side. This one, by chance, is the picture of Richard, which would be Otto's son. Yeah, and if you can see, it's a picture of Anna, or of Richard enjoying a sandwich. All right, next one. Okay, now this picture is just a priceless picture. I just love this picture. This is Frank Bench in the Chillicothe Baking Company bakery. And this actually is a photograph that is with the Smithsonian. It belongs to the Smithsonian. They were gracious enough to share the photo. But this gives us a glimpse as to what it really looked like inside that building. And a notation, which I'm guessing was written probably by Otto. It says, first installation at Chillicothe Baking Company, Chillicothe, Missouri. So that was such a treasure to get to see that picture. And that's when some of the conversation that I had with Claudia, I was like, this is priceless. Okay, the building, for those of you who are not familiar with Chillicothe, still stands today, and it's near the train depot, that old train depot. Now, Otto considered Chillicothe as a demonstration town for his invention. According to a 1928 article in the Davenport Chamber of Commerce News, Chillicothe Baking Company was the first to have a bread slicing machine. It also shows how quickly bakers around, whoops, sorry. I'm skipping my pages here. I apologize. I got this here. The article stated that Chillicothe was a typical small town community, and that was an asset for a testing ground because it was felt that small town people would be less receptive to a new idea than people in larger cities. And additionally, the article stated that maybe it has something to show me, where the show me is. Show me that this will work. And additionally, the article had stated that the bakery had lost some of its market share in the community, and this was a time when competition was rising. No pun intended there. The situation, so it offered some handicaps, which made the demonstration a real test. And as you wouldn't know necessarily, but the results were astounding and immediate. Bread sales increased by leaps and bounds, and soon the bakery realized a 2,000% increase in sales. Huge. And for the first 45 days, the demand for sliced bread had continued beyond the capacity of the bakery. And after 6 months of heavy use, the bread slicing machine basically fell apart. It was used a lot. Okay, go on to the next slide. Oh, let's go down. Okay. And this just shows the internal workings of a bread slicer. I'm not sure if this is the very first one, but it's the internal operations of the bread slicing. The slicer was the first slicer was a reciprocating knife frame slicing machine, capable of slicing an entire loaf in a single operation. This is just one of the patents. Otto had secured his first patent in 1928 on a bread slicer, on his design through the patent process until 1930, and he had kept on improving upon his design until 1936. He held in all a total of 15 patents on bread slicing machines and their components. And patent in the baking industry, I thought this was kind of interesting. In the baking industry, nothing really new had happened. And so the industry was very ready for something new to come about, and sliced bread just happened to be it. In talking with relatives of both families, the Bench and the Rowetter families, I think both of the men were very disappointed that neither one of them got rich after the introduction of sliced bread. In a 1950 article in the Constitution Tribune, when Frank was interviewed, he said that the idea of sliced bread caught on fast, and it was just too fast, and that neither the inventor nor himself made a cent out of the invention. And this just shows a slicer in action. And trying to think too, back to the day, now sliced bread is so common, of course. So is sliced bacon, so is ground coffee. But there was a time when people thought that sliced bacon just didn't make sense. But it didn't take long before all the stores, that's what they had, was sliced bacon. And so that's kind of how sliced bread was. Once it was introduced, there was no turning back. And Otto he had contacted bakers throughout the country, trying to get people convinced, or bakers convinced, that this would be, that he was onto something, that this is what the public wanted. And the bakers just kept on turning him down. They scoffed at the idea. They said, how can you slice bread and it still remain fresh? It would dry out. And then you've got the other aspect, if anybody's ever tried to cut freshly baked bread, it's not easy. So there was a lot of skepticism whether, for bakers to actually take a chance. And fortunately, Frank Bench, he knew that there was strong possibilities there. Let's see, go ahead. And that's just an image of another bread slicer. I think this is very similar to the one that we might be seeing in a little bit. All right, go ahead. And this is actually the bread slicer put to use here in Chillicothe, in the Chillicothe Bakery. Let's see, go ahead. Okay, and I talked a little bit about this and I wish I had a better resolution on that, just where you can see it, but it wasn't a big story in 1928. It was just a regular story, and I think too, could have been very easily to miss that as I was scanning the microfilm. But that just gave validity that, hey, maybe this happened here. And go on to the next slide. And again, there's the image of the full page ad. And this here are the listings of grocery stores that were selling sliced bread the next day. All right, go on. Okay, okay, this is an orders list, and this is just a small portion of the orders list. And it shows that Chillicothe, it has the bakeries and the dates that the machines were ordered, whether they were delivered, how many they ordered, the times, and whether they have an exclusive on their machine. And so this shows that Chillicothe Baking Company was the first to have a bread slicing machine. And it also shows how quickly, which is amazing, because like I said, this is just a small portion of probably 3 or 4 pages of baking companies. So it shows how quickly the bakers around the country wanted a machine. And they were impatient because they wanted it now. They didn't want to be the last one in the block. They wanted to be the first one to have the machine. But unfortunately, he couldn't keep up with the production. And the bakers, they would get impatient with him. They would be calling him day and night, saying, where's my machine? Where's my machine? And it got to the point where at one time that he just needed to get away. And so he took his family onto a boat on the river just so he could get a good night's sleep. All right, go on to the next one. Okay, this is Otto's son, Richard. He had come to Chillicothe in 2003. And this was his second time being in Chillicothe. Richard was here in 1928, and he fed the first loaf of bread through his father's bread slicing machine right here at the Chillicothe Baking Company. And as you can tell, we snapped a picture of him in front of the bakery. And he was 89 when he traveled to Chillicothe to share his story, but he could remember it vividly. And it was just a very nice visit that I had with him. And so I need to just mention, is everybody hearing me okay? Yeah. Great, okay. Just need to mention a little bit about how I came to know Richard. Because remember, I just had the newspaper article. That is all I had. And it didn't give much much information. It just talked about that Frank Bench was using the Rowetter bread slicing machine. And that was it. There was no connection, and from what I understood, there was nothing in city archives or anything that gave indication that this event even took place. And so anyway, it was in 2003, it was a couple years after the history book had come out, that a reporter from the Kansas City Star had come to Chillicothe, and he was doing research on a totally unrelated article, and he stopped by the Constitution Tribune and asked if we had any information about this particular subject. And I said, well, I think so, and I'll go back and check my files. I said, meanwhile, here, take a look at my history book, and turn to the page there of sliced bread, and maybe you need to do a story on that. Well, this was the summer of 2003, and the 75th anniversary of sliced bread was just coming up. And so he, a couple weeks later, he did a little bit of research, and he came out with a story. And the story, it didn't provide a whole lot of detail, but it was a story that who claims being the home of sliced bread? Well, during his research, he had found that Michigan. Is it Grand Rapids, Michigan?
Battle Creek.
Battle Creek, that's it, thank you. In his research, he found that Battle Creek was kind of claiming to be the home of sliced bread, but they had nothing in the 1920s that had any connection to sliced bread. Well, at least Chillicothe, we had the article saying, hey, we've got sliced bread, so we had that information, but that's all we had. But nonetheless, that was the first step, though, because that article that the Kansas City Star reporter had written, it went on the wire service, and then it went worldwide. And I know that it went worldwide because some of the first calls that I was receiving were from Canada and Australia, and their first question was, are you really the home of sliced bread? And still at that point, I had no idea other than that newspaper article. And so fortunately, a couple days, or it was probably about a week later, I received a letter in the mail, and it was from a man named Robert Ludlow of Bedford Industries. And the letter said, yes, that event, the first sliced bread, was introduced to the public in Chillicothe, Missouri. He said, I know this because I employed the inventor's son. He proceeded to say, this is Richard Rowetters' address, and this is his phone number, and you may contact him. So that is really how I got to learn the rest of the story. After I had that information, you can imagine how thrilled I was. I thought, now we could pull it all together, start pulling the pieces together. I called Richard on the phone right away, and I said, boy, do I have questions for you, and which, by the way, he was living in Arkansas at the time, and I said, I've got a lot of questions for you. And he said, well, I'll try to answer them. He said, you just write them down and mail them to me. And just to give you an idea of the kind of character he is, or was, he said, you better hurry, because I'm no spring chicken. So I'm there saying a little prayer, and I'm writing out my questions and dropping it in the mail. And sure enough, 2 days later, I get a phone call, and Richard said, you know, I've got all the questions to your answers. I said, he said, it's in my father's scrapbook. I said, okay, well, you're in Arkansas. This is the information I need. I said, great, can you mail it to me? Oh, no, I can't do that. He says, well, you know what, I think I might just come up to Chillicothe. So he started to make plans, and I tell you, within 2 weeks, he was in Chillicothe, standing in front of the bakery, sharing his story, sharing his father's scrapbook with me so we can preserve the story of sliced bread. And a lot of the images that you see on here did come from his scrapbook, so it was quite a treasure to have. All right, go on to the next one. And then once we had all the pieces together in this puzzle, we started getting a lot of interest in Chillicothe. Some national interest in Chillicothe. One of the first ones was the Ripley's, believe it or not. They wanted to do a little cartoon, and it says, hey, did you know that sliced bread was invented in Chillicothe in 1928? Another one, there was a feature in U.S. News and World Report, National Examiner, Missouri Rural Missouri, Severe Food Magazine. They published a story about the history of sliced bread in their sandwich issue a couple of years ago. And just this July in the Reader's Digest, Chillicothe was mentioned, surprisingly, as one of the surprising reasons we love America. That's great. That's great. So we've had a lot, and that's just a few of it. And also, too, I don't know if anybody has seen CBS Sunday Morning just today. Yes. And so that was a great exposure for Chillicothe, although they kind of had a little trouble with the pronunciation, but that's okay. We'll take the attention anyway. So it was really great that they gave attention to Chillicothe. All right, go ahead to the next slide. I might mention too that shortly after Richard's visit at Douglas, if you want to give a wave, he was very instrumental in putting together the sliced bread committee. And I know it sounds a little odd, but I tell you, Ed and his group worked hard to try to spread the news and kind of preserve this history as well, too. And one of the first things that the committee did was work on getting a marker, historical marker placed on the building. So that was several years ago. And so that's great. The marker's there if you want to go and read some information about it. All right. Part of it also, too, the committee decided upon a logo, Home of Sliced Bread. Just one section. Please go ahead. And then keeping the story alive. And I tell you what, I think the community is having a lot of fun with this. I mean, we've got a unique identity in Chillicothe. If you're from Chillicothe, you obviously know the mural. If you're not from Chillicothe, you probably have seen it. It's on Highway 65, big, beautiful mural that just says Home of Sliced Bread and has a vintage mural scene. So that's just one of the many beautiful murals that we have in town. Tours come here, they're interested. The media, we just covered a little bit about that. Souvenirs, you know, there's t-shirts and wall hangings and candles that smell like freshly baked bread. And as you notice, too, one of the restaurants is now carrying sliced bread cookies as part of their signature dessert. So it's just a lot of fun along those lines. And of course, the museum exhibit, how exciting is that to actually have an artifact from the Smithsonian here that's just great to have. Every year there's a bread baking contest, and just this year was started the Sliced Bread Jam Bluegrass Festival, and it was held a couple of weeks ago, and it was great. Great turnout for that. There's just another one of the signs in the building ahead. Sliced Bread Committee also has formed a website, and what would you think? It's www.homeofslicedbread.com, and that's where a lot of the inquiries come in. If people want information, that's the first place that they stop. So that serves a very important role right there. All right. And there's the mural. Beautiful mural here. Kelly, I saw Kelly here earlier. Kelly, part of the committee and also part of the museum board that had painted that.
While we're on the subject of Kelly, he is the artist that has painted all of the murals inside the museum with the exception of one. There's one back here in the back room that Scott Rule painted. But Kelly is the artist that has taken care of us, so appreciate the work, Kelly.
Did a beautiful job painting in the exhibit area of sliced bread. All right, makes sense. Okay, well, this kind of brings us to the end, and this is pretty much what anybody's seen. We haven't seen it uncrated. And so that actually is the delivery from the Smithsonian. The delivery folks were very nervous, extremely nervous once they got here. And that, of course, is Marvin driving a forklift. He did a fabulous job. I must say. I think there were some that might have been a little bit nervous, but Marvin did a fabulous job bringing it in. And then it took a while to get it uncrated. And so anyway, this is a great, great time to be here.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you. We do a ribbon cutting. So the ribbon cutting crew, the cookies are from the yogurt shop. We conned them in to trying to bake cookies that look like little slices of bread. And after they got into this, they inform us that these are now going to be one of their signature desserts. So these will be available at the yogurt shop. I have been asked to be sure you all sign the guest book. There is some trivia stuff laying over on the counter. Anyone that wants to attempt that would go for it.
I gotta
Pam?
say that the answers are hidden throughout the museum. We haven't just hit the bread slicer exhibit, so you need to look, and they're yellow labels. I'm going to give one away right there on the desk. Those are where the answers are.
And then she also wants you to write on the blackboard what you're thinking might be of our museum. Last, as most of you probably know, anytime you're dealing with the government, It's not cheap. We do have a donation jar if you would like to help. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I might also mention that we do have KCPT in here filming and WHB. WHB.
Okay, you ready?
Hey. So we just gonna give it to her?
I just use it for storage for my business. I've got tools. What's that? I know.
Thank you.
Really does look just like the picture.
Whatever you require for audio, video, and broadcast solutions, it's Professional Video Supply. PVS is a leading supplier and integrator of pro video and audio gear for the Midwest. For the boardroom, worship, production houses, medical facilities, TV stations, and sports networks, PVS has it. Canon, Sony, Yamaha, Sharp, and hundreds of others. From a single camera or touchscreen display to an entire TV studio, remember Professional Video Supply, the official video source for 810 WHB TV at pvskc.com. pvskc.com.